Okay, now it's completely all right. So, what we're going to be doing today is wrapping up our look at complex experimental designs. And we're going to do that by taking a look at the most complex experimental design that we've encountered so far, 3 independent variables, and how do you interpret those independent variables. So this is where we finally get to see, in a scholarship award, what is the effect of attractiveness on winning that scholarship? Or is it better to be attractive, or is it better to be unattractive? And does that effect of attractiveness change if it's a male applicant versus a female applicant? And does that change if it's male judges versus female judges? We're going to see all of that today. But before we get to that, just a reminder that we do have exam number 3 coming up next class, actually. So it's going to be Tuesday, November 12th. So the chapters is going to cover the last 3 chapters since the previous exam. So chapters 10, 12, and 13. And the lectures it'll cover are these lectures right here, including today's lecture as well. So it's going to be much like the previous exam. It's going to be multiple choice. There's going to be 2 sections. Section number 1, covering materials from the readings that are assigned but are not spent a lot of time on in class. Section 2 covers materials from the readings that are covered in class and in the lectures. So because of this, Section 1 worth only 1/3 of your score, Section 2 worth 2/3 of your score, and Section 1 will have recognition type questions only, so you don't have to know the material in depth, you just have to be able to recognize it. However, for Section 2, there can be recognition type questions, but there can also be application type questions, and we will have once again, a bonus logic puzzle available for Section 2, so 5 bonus points available for Section 2. And if you are taking advantage of boosting your Exam 2 grade by completing those puzzle bearing logic puzzles and sending in those screenshots, just know that you have until Monday, November 11th at midnight to upload those to Canvas for those to count towards your exam number 2. And a few of you took advantage of that for exam number 1 and improved your grade. So definitely, if you want to do that for exam number 2, feel free as well. All right, any questions on exam 3 before we go to today's class? All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce our look at the discussion section. So we're going to spend a brief little bit of time on this just because it's not due for a little bit. But I do want to put that on your radar so that you have the content requirement, the APA requirement. You can start thinking about how you're going to be writing your discussion section. And then we will go into more details in the class after the exam about exactly what goes in there, how to do some of the logical things in there as well. And then we're going to wrap up our look at the interpretation of factorial designs by taking a look at the attractiveness and perceived academic merit. All right, so your discussion section. What is going to go in to your discussion section? Well, first off, notice that we're writing the discussion section. So we've written the methods, we've written the results. Now we're going to write the discussion section. And you'll notice we haven't written the introduction yet. And that's a very typical strategy for writing a research report. It's almost like writing a murder mystery novel. You figure out the ending first, and then you write the beginning to kind of point the reader to the ending. So that's what we're going to be doing for our discussion section. We're going to write the ending. What does it all mean for our research paper? And then knowing where we want to end up is going to help us figure out how to write that introduction. So in terms of the content of the discussion section, this is where you finally present the conclusions of your research. So the results section told the reader what you found. What were the results? What were the numbers? What were the differences between the different groups? The discussion section is now where you say what those differences mean. What do those numbers mean? What are the implications of that information from the results section? So you want to present the conclusions from your research. You want to indicate whether your research fits with previous theories or does it not fit with previous theories. And you need to point out why or why not. So for example, the work that we've done, the results that we found, was that what Roediger and McDermott would have expected based on their theories of reconstructive memory? The results that we found, was that what Weldon and Bellinger would have expected given their work on on group memory, the results that we found was that what other researchers from your other 3 articles would have expected if their theories were true. And if it was something that they would have expected, that means our research fits with previous theories, and you would say things like, oh, Roediger and McDermott found high rates of false memories in their studies. We also found high rates of false memories in our studies. Therefore, it fits with Roediger and McDermott's ideas. And if it doesn't fit, then you have to indicate what is it about our results that don't mesh with those previous theories. And then the last sort of part of the discussion section, you want implications of the research. You want to tie your research into something about the real world. So if our results are true, if this is the way that reconstructed memory works, if this is the way that group memory works, if groups have just the same number of false memories as individuals do, but they have higher confidence in their false memories than individuals do, what does that mean for the world? What should we do? What should our education system look like? What should our judicial system look like? We don't have to do all the implications. Just think about one application of our results to the real world. What should the real world be like given what we found in our lab? And then the final portion of this is future research directions. And a future research direction can be thought of as that post-credit scene in any Marvel movie that tells you about the next movie that's coming out. To kind of get you excited and think about, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what they're going to do next. So we're going to do the same thing here. And future research directions, the biggest mistake that beginner writers make is they forget when they give a future research direction to give a reason why they're going to have that future research direction. And what I mean by this is, what are you hoping to show? What would certain results indicate? So if I was thinking about future research directions for this study, we just finished taking a look at group memory and false memory. A future research direction for this might be something like, well, we did it with adult-aged individuals. What if we did it with children? You know, what would happen in that case? Speaking of different ages, what if we did it with elderly individuals? And we did it in the afternoon. What if we did it in the morning? And we did it with words. What if we did it with pictures? And we did it with English words. What if we did it with foreign language words? And we used humans. What if we used wolves instead? And we used, we projected it on a screen. What if we heard it tape recorded instead? There's a million future research directions. And all of them could be exciting. All of them could be interesting, but only if you give a reason. So an example of a reason would be, we'll choose one of the more ludicrous ones. We'll choose the wolf one. It's like, yes, we could do future research direction. I would love to do this research with wolves instead of humans. Why? Well, because wolves are social animals, right? They run in packs. They're highly social. So if these results that we found about false memories are due to the social aspects of human interaction, then as much as wolves are social, we should find the same patterns in wolves. If, on the other hand, what we found has nothing to do with us socially interacting, then we're probably not going to find those with wolves. All of a sudden, the wolf study goes from being ludicrous to being something that I would like to read. And again, it's because you need those reasons. Why are you doing this? What would it show if it went this way? What would it show if it went that way? Try to think about what that future direction might be. All right, any questions on just this general outline of what we're going to be doing? Again, we'll go into more details after the exam, but again, I just wanted to put this on your radar at this point. Okay. So in terms of other content stuff, a tip for writing your discussion section, the way that you want to start is you want to start with whether or not your results that you just, that your reader would have just read, you want to start your first paragraph with whether or not the results that you just reported support or refute your hypothesis from the introduction. So you'll notice that this is going to take a little bit of imagination because you haven't written your introduction yet. So you are going to want to write as if you have already written your introduction. You're going to want to write your discussion as if you've already fixed all the issues and planned out your introduction, and you've already written a great introduction. So for this, whether or not your results support or refute your hypothesis, the hint is that it should support a hypothesis. And we'll go over next class how to come up with hypotheses, but it should support one hypothesis at least that came from your introduction. And if it doesn't, then you have to rewrite your introduction. So this is something that we all kind of intuitively know. And this is something that becomes apparent when you understand that your research report is not a diary, it's not a journal of what we did and what we thought at the beginning versus what we thought in the middle versus what we thought at the end. It is a story where we present the truth. We're not making stuff up, but we present the truth to a reader in a compelling manner. So it's a story that needs to be compelling. This, having a hypothesis in the introduction that is supported by the results, makes it a compelling story. It works with the way that our mind is wired. And the best analogy for this is the mystery murder novel. So I don't know if you've ever read a mystery murder novel or if you've seen one of the mystery murder type movies, but we've seen the Test Your Awareness with Lady Smythe, as any horticulturist will know. That example from before. So we all know that final scenario where the detective has looked at all the clues and done all the deduction, and they're in the room, and the three suspects are in the room with them, right? And there's the butler, and there's the maid, and then there's the mailman, right? And the detective is sitting there, and he goes, well, it couldn't have been the butler, because the butler is left-handed, and clearly this murder was committed by a right-handed person because of the slashes. We know that they slashed from left to right instead of right to left. So it couldn't have been the butler, it's not the butler. So now the maid and the milkman are sweating it out, and they go, well, it couldn't have been the maid, because at the time of the murder, the body was thrown into the river, so it must have been murdered on this particular date. The maid was out of the country on that particular date, so it couldn't be the maid. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's got to be the milkman. If at that point they say, and it's not the milkman, you're like, what? You're a little confused. And it's like, yes, it couldn't have been the milkman. In effect, it is his elementary school teacher, which we mentioned in one paragraph. And yes, they're the murderer. Surprise, right? People hate that. People absolutely hate those stories because it's just pulled out of nowhere. And this elementary school teacher comes in and they're like, yeah, I guess I'm the murderer. And nobody's satisfied. Don't do that to your readers. Don't set up your introduction and say, ooh, hypothesis one is that if this theory is true, we should find this pattern of false memories. Hypothesis two is if this theory is true, we should find this pattern of false memories. And lo and behold, here in discussion, neither of them is true. Surprise, it's the elementary school teacher. No, go back, rewrite your introduction and say, if it's the elementary school teacher, we'll find this pattern of results. That's why we're writing the introduction later. So we're going to figure out our ending. One of your hypotheses is going to be supported, and again, we'll show you how to come up with hypotheses, but make sure that that pops up in the introduction, that you have suspects in the introduction, one of whom is the eventual murderer in your discussion section. All right, now the last kind of tip that I'll just put on your mind to keep in, there's a few things that I do not want to see, a few things that you should never say, and these are things that, once again, a beginner writer tends to try to put into their papers. So these are things that I do not want to see at all, and you should never write. Never write more research is needed. The reason why these never say things are here is not because they're false. It's because they're ineffective. It's because they detract from your story. It's because they cut out the legs from the boldness of your scientific assertions. So when you say more research is needed, That sounds true, because nobody's ever going to finish psychology. Nobody is ever going to do an experiment, write it up and say, oh, well, that's it, psychology's done. I guess all our psychology researchers are out of a job. Nobody's going to do that, right? So more research is always needed. But the way that this is used is to basically say, well, I don't want to stand behind my assertions. I don't want to be wrong later on. So rather than say, this is what our results mean, and this is how memory works, I'm going to say, maybe this is how it means, and how it works, and maybe this is what our results mean. But more research is needed. We need to look at more things before we can be sure. We always need to look at more things before we can be sure. But this is just backpedaling and not being bold. We want to be as bold as we can. So when you write, think about that detective in the final chapter of that murder mystery novel. And they're always like, it's not the butler because of this, and it's not the maid because of this. It is, in fact, the elementary school teacher, right? Because of this, right? They're always bold. They're always big. They're never like, well, I don't know. I don't think it's the butler. Maybe I have some evidence here. If this is any good for anybody. I'm kind of feeling it's the elementary school teacher. Maybe. No. You want to be bold. You want to be big. Don't say more research is needed. Other things. More subjects could have been run. This is a favorite. Once again, this is true. More subjects could have been run. We ran 181. We could have run 200, would be better. We could have run 300, would be better than 200. More subjects could always have been run. Again, what this means is I don't want to stand behind my results. I don't want to stand behind my assertions. Let me hide by saying, you know what? More subjects could have been run. Cannot conclude for certain. This, again, is true. This is what science is like. I get very annoyed when people say things like, well, science has proven this, science has proven that. No, science has never proven anything. You can't prove anything. You can never conclude for certain. It's sort of like with any decision, you can never be certain. So if you are traveling somewhere and you're coming back to South Bend and you ask your friend to pick you up at the airport, and you ask your friend, can you pick me up Friday night at 8? And your friend is like, yes. And you're like, are you sure you're going to be there? And your friend is like, yes, I will be there. And you're like, are you really sure you're going to be there? And your friend is like, yes, I am dependable. I'm really sure. And you're like, are you really, really sure you're going to be there? And your friend is like, absolutely. I will not let you down. And they're like, are you really, 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 like really positively, absolutely, really, totally 100%, can you prove for certain that you're going to be there? Your friend, no matter how dependable, is going to say, no, I can't. I might get hit with a meteor on the way there. The earth might explode. I don't know. I might not be able to make it. You can never conclude for certain. What this tells the reader is that you have no faith in your work. You have no courage behind your convictions. Don't write it. It literally just chops the legs off. If I was reading a research paper and I got to the end and I saw any of these three statements, I would think to myself, why did I waste my 2 hours of my life reading this? If they won't stand behind what they say, why should I have any faith in what they've done? All right, so don't say that. And this is going to be the general outline that we're going to use. So you're going to present the conclusions from your research. Does it fit with your hypotheses and what was found? Does your research fit with the previous theories? Does it fit with what Weldon and Bellinger said? Does it fit with what Roediger and McDermott said? Does it fit with Deese? Does it fit with some of your other articles? And you don't have to go through all 6, right? We're not going to be exhaustive. We just need to hit these notes. Implications of the research. What does it mean for the real world? What should we do in the educational system? What should we do in the judicial system? What about Wall Street? What about the way that movies are made? What about mob mentality? Anything that you can think of, we need one implication, and then one future research direction and give reasons, and that is in general your discussion section. So that's going to be the content. Any questions on that? And again, we'll cover a little bit more detail about what that is all about. In terms of the APA requirements, all previous requirements are moving forward from before, so anything from the method and the results section. New requirements, check out the organization of the report. It'll basically reproduce a lot of the info that I gave you here, but it's nice to have a second perspective. And then the big thing, though, that we're going to now adopt is citing and referencing your sources. You're going to have a lot of citations in your discussion section, mostly because you're going to be talking a lot about other people's theories. So in the method section, we had one citation. We said we took our stuff from Roediger and McDermott. In the results section, we had no citations. It was all us. It was all our results. In the discussion section is where we start saying things like, oh, this fits with Weldon and Bellinger. Oh, this fits with Roediger and McDermott. These researchers thought that this was the case. These other researchers thought that this was the case, but our results show that this is the case. So we're going to be citing a lot. So check out citation style in that citing and referencing sources section. And that's the only big new one. So keep formatting your report, double space, Times New Roman, 1-inch margins all around. And that's the APA requirements. So all of this is going to be due November 19th. So yeah, that makes sense. November 19th. So we are going to have one more class where we'll go into a little bit more detail about all these requirements. You have to, once again, submit this to turn it in. This is going to be the last one submitted to turn it in, your last chance to get feedback to help you improve your final research paper. If you're looking at what length, about 2.5 pages is that nice sweet spot for how long your discussion should be. So we're not looking for an exhaustive look at every single theory and thing that you read about. We're just looking to hit those high notes with, or those spots with 1 or 2 ideas, and that'll take about more than 2, less than 3 pages typically. That's if it's double space, Times New Roman, and 1-inch margins all around. And once again, it's going to be peer reviewed. This is the last one that'll be peer reviewed, so it'll be submitted through Turnitin. All right. Any final questions on that? Okay, so we've been talking around this long enough. Let's see what's happened. Scholarships, attractiveness. Does it help? Does it not help? And is the story different if you're a man or a woman? And is the story different if you're being judged by a male or a female? So we are going to take a look at Ackley, Sporlia, and Maynard's stage manipulation. So again, remember that subjects thought they were part of a scholarship selection simulation. It was actually about the halo effect. And we had male subjects and we had female subjects, and they took a look at 3 male applications or 3 female applications for scholarships, came with photos, and the photo on one of the scholarships was a highly attractive individual, photo on the other scholarship, middle attractive, photo on the third scholarship, unattractive individual. And the question is when males are judging males, who gets the scholarship? When males are judging females, who gets the scholarship? When females are judging males, who gets the scholarship? And when females are judging females, who gets the scholarship? Does attractiveness affect who's going to be deemed worthy of that particular scholarship? All right, so our dependent variable was the percentage awarded a scholarship. So randomly, you would have a 33% chance of being awarded a scholarship. So if they just put the scholarships out and just blindfolded the subjects and said, which one do you want? Oh, I want this one. Subjects would get awarded, the applications would have a 33% chance. So higher scores means that they were helped. Lower scores means that they were avoided by the other variables. So independent variable A is the target sex. That's the sex of the applicants. 2 levels, male versus female. Independent variable B, that is the levels of attractiveness. 3 levels, either low, medium, or high. And finally, independent variable C is the subject sex. Who's doing the judging? 2 levels, male and female. And we have a 2x3x2 design. We have 12 individual combinations of everything. And now we need to break this down into its main effects, into its interactions, and into its 3-way interaction. All right, so let's get going on this. So first one, target sex. two levels, male versus female. So was there a main effect? So another way to think about this is that in this case, all we want to know is what is the effect of the sex of the applicant. And that means that we're not interested in questions of attractiveness. We're not interested in the effect of attractiveness. And we're not interested in the sex of the judges. So we're not worried about whether it's a male judging somebody, whether it's a female judging somebody. It's just people judging, in general, attractive people. So do we think that male applicants or female applicants will have different scores on the percent that were awarded a scholarship? So percent target in first position, this is what percentage of the applicants were awarded a scholarship. So any ideas on this? I'll give you a hint. This is a bit of a trick question, just to make sure that we are thinking about the design of the experiment. Yep.
Wouldn't there be no difference just because?
Yep, you're right.
You're looking at like 1 out of every 3 is going to get a scholarship.
Exactly. So that's why we're starting with this one, just to keep that in our minds. Out of the male applicants, it has to be 33% because you're given 3 applications. They were all male. 1 out of 3 was going to get the application. It had to be 33%. Out of the female applicants, also had to be 33%. You could be the most chauvinistic individual in the world, have the worst opinion of females in the world. You would still give 1 out of every 3 females in this experiment a scholarship. So this is interesting because if you only look at the main effects, then this variable here of target sex couldn't have a main effect. It couldn't possibly have a main effect just by the design of the experiment. So it almost, if you only look at main effects, seems like a throwaway variable. Why even include it? You couldn't possibly have an effect. But as we're going to see, just because it doesn't have a main effect doesn't mean that it's not doing anything. It does have an effect, but it only comes out in the interactions. All right, so let's take a look at one that actually does have an effect. So this is attractiveness. So we're looking for the main effect of attractiveness. So in this case, we are not worried about whether the applications are from a male or a female, right? We're not worried about applications from males or females. We're just looking at applications from people. And we're not worried about whether it's a male or a female that's judging these applications. It's just people judging these applications. So when people are judging the applications of people, what is going to be the effect of being low, middle, or high attractive? Who do we think is going to get the most scholarships, who's going to get the second most, and who's going to get the fewest scholarships when people in general are judging other people in general? So any ideas on this one? Yep.
I would think that the higher attractive people would get more scholarships because generally in like society most of the time like attractive people are just considered to be better at most stuff.
Mm-hmm. So that is that's a nice example of a hypothesis that is driven by a theory. So if I was writing this introduction, we would talk about the halo effect. The halo effect is that idea that attractiveness influences your perception of other characteristics. The classic halo effect is that highly attractive people are perceived as more intelligent. Middle attractive people as middle intelligent, lowly attractive people as unintelligent. So in this situation, if the halo effect is occurring, highly attractive individuals should get the most scholarships, middle attractive should get in the middle, low attractive should get the least. So that's one possible prediction. The halo effect is supported if this is the highest, middle, and then this is the lowest in terms of scholarships. Any other predictions of anything else that might occur? Does anybody does anybody think that the low attractive individuals might get the most scholarships? Does anybody believe the middle attractive individuals might get the most? Got one believer. Well, as it turns out, you're right. It was the middle individuals that got the most scholarships. So this result does not support the halo effect. The halo effect says this should be highest, this should be second, this should be lowest. So if I was writing this discussion section, I would say that our results do not support the theory of the halo effect. Specifically, the most scholarships were given to the middle attractive individuals, then followed by the high, then followed by the low, and that's not what the halo theory predicted. So this was kind of the first indication that something really interesting is going on here, because for some reason, people in the middle of attractiveness were given the highest scholarships, whereas the halo effect would have predicted that relation, which they did not find. And if you ever look up the halo effect, it is robust. It has occurred very often in psychology. It's been replicated very often, so this was very surprising. What is going on here? All right, so we got one last variable, independent variable B, main effect. Yes, there was. As it turns out, middle attractive individuals received the most scholarships. All right, so we got one last independent variable, one last main effect to look at, and this is subject sex. So once again, we got two levels, male or female. And when we're looking at this main effect, we're not interested in attractiveness. So we're not interested in the difference between low, middle, and highly attractive individuals. And we're not interested in male versus female applicants either. All we're interested is in female judges versus male judges. So do we think that female judges are going to give away more scholarships than male judges? Or are male judges going to give away more scholarships than female judges? Or is there going to be no difference? So I've already pulled this move on you once, so I won't do it again. I'll just let you guys know that this one was tied as well. Not only was it tied, it had to be tied. Because if you were a male subject in this study, you had to give one of the individuals a scholarship. Males had to give away one-third of the applicants had to receive a scholarship. So it didn't matter what your opinions were. It didn't matter what your behavior was. It didn't matter what your characteristics were. Whatever type of male you were giving away one scholarship. If you were looking at 3 females, one of them got a scholarship. You're looking at 3 males, one of them got a scholarship. Same thing for females. It didn't matter what their opinions were, what their behaviors were, what their cognitive processes were. If they were looking at male applicants, one of them got a scholarship. If they're looking at female, one of them got a scholarship. So we now have 2 out of 3 independent variables that couldn't have a main effect. So again, if you only look at independent variables, this experiment is garbage, right? Because they're like, oh, we have 3 independent variables. By the way, 2 of them are useless because they can't have any main effects. That's what if we only looked at main effects. As it turns out, subject sex isn't doing anything in the main effect. That doesn't mean that it's not doing anything. The story of subject sex comes out, but only in the interactions. All right, so enough talk about the interactions. Let's get to them. We got interaction, independent variable A times B, target sex, and attractiveness. So this is basically asking for male and female applicants, does attractiveness work differently? Interaction A times C, target sex times subject sex. For male and female applicants, are they awarded scholarships differently by male and female judges? Interaction BC, attractiveness times subject sex. Does the effect of attractiveness differ for male or female judges? And then finally, we got the big 3-way interaction, which is basically saying, does who gets a scholarship depend on all 3 of these, on target sex, attractiveness, and subject sex? So if you want to predict who's going to get a scholarship, do you need to know all 3 pieces of those information? All right, so let's start off with target sex times attractiveness. Interaction, we want to know, does the difference between attractiveness depend upon the target sex, the sex of the person being judged. So attractiveness is going to have an effect. We've already seen that. We've seen that in the main effect. Is the effect of attractiveness different for male applicants than it is for female applicants? So in this interaction, it's as if we're no longer interested in the sex of the judges. They're just people. So it's just people judging males, people judging females. What's the effect of attractiveness going to be for males and females? So we'll talk about each of these in turn. So when people are judging males, what do we think? Who's going to get the most scholarships? When people are judging females, who's going to get the most scholarships? Any suggestions? Any thoughts?
Probably the middle attractiveness would get the most scholarships. It probably wouldn't be the highest because typically, like very attractive females are just considered kind of dumber, I guess.
Okay. So in our society, we have the stereotype of the super good-looking bimbo, basically.
Yeah.
So it could be that people in this study are going to show that stereotype. They're going to buy into that stereotype, and they're going to say, you know what? We have this female here. And she's highly attractive, no way she's intelligent. So we're going to give a low amount of scholarships there. The middle attractive female, seems intelligent. And the low attractive female, I don't know, might seem the same amount, might be less. But definitely, if that stereotype is true, not if the stereotype is true, if that stereotype is believed, then we should expect females that are highly attractive to get the fewest scholarships. So that's one possible prediction. Any other ideas? Does anybody want to argue the other way, that highly attractive females will get the most scholarships? No? Okay. Does anybody have opinions on what's going to happen with males? Is it going to be different? Yep.
I think with males, it'd be almost the opposite. I think the highly attractive males will get more scholarships because attractive men are more considered intelligent.
Okay.
Men.
So in that case, that would be a more straightforward example of the halo effect. So for males, when people are judging males, they might say, well, we don't have that stereotype of the mimbo, I guess is what you would call them. So highly attractive males are going to be perceived as more intelligent, middle attractive, and then less attractive. So highly attractive males will get the most scholarships, and then they'll go down to the lowest attractive individuals. Any other speculations, possibilities before we see what actually happened? All right. Well, the speculations are pretty close. So that's the actual data. That's actually what the results were. So we'll start off with the middle attractive. Sorry, we'll start off with the females. So as kind of predicted, highly attractive females did not get the most scholarships. They were not seen as the most deserving. It was actually the middle attractive females. And again, this is importantly remember, this is by people. So this is the female and male judges combined. Together, they gave middle attractive females the most scholarships. Unattractive females, they gave the least amount of scholarships to. And then for males, the effect of attractiveness seems to be a little bit of a halo effect, but it kind of seems that as long as you are not unattractive, you're fine as a male, right? So high attractive and middle attractive individuals, not that much of a difference. But just as long as you are not unattractive, you do fine. So in this case, given this scenario, if somebody texted you, I'm trying to do this. If somebody had a new phone, right? One of your friends gets a new phone. And you got to do that new phone who dis thing when they text you. So they got a new phone, and so you got a new phone, and somebody texts you and says, I'm going in for a job interview. I need to know, should I try to look really attractive? Should I try to look middle attractive, or should I try to look unattractive? What would you have to answer your friend, depending on this, given this result here? What's the first thing you would have to do? What was that?
Ask if they're male or female.
Ask if they're male or female. So if your friend, that's what this interaction, and that's what any interaction really means. If that friend of yours says, I got a job interview and I need to know, should I make myself look super attractive or should I make myself middle attractive or unattractive? You would have to say, new phone, who dis? Specifically, are you male or are you female? Because the story is different. If it's a male friend, you tell them, yeah, go put on your best suit, brush your hair, make yourself look as good as you possibly can. If not, make sure that you're at least presentable, because you'll be fine as long as you're not unattractive. Don't roll out of bed and go to this interview. But if your friend is like, oh no, this is Susan, you'd be like, oh, wait a second. No, that's completely different. Don't look too good. Don't be too attractive. Look middle attractive, right? So don't go to the salon, don't get that new dress, don't do your makeup. Make yourself look presentable. Don't just roll out of bed. That's the worst one. Make yourself presentable, but not too attractive. That's the success. That's the level of attractiveness that'll give you the most success. This is an interaction because it's two different stories. It's an interaction because you cannot say what's going to happen until you have that second piece of information. So you don't know what attractiveness is going to do until you say, new phone, who dis? Are you on the blue line or are you on the red line? All right, so does the difference between attractiveness depend upon the target sex of the person? Yes, it does. If you're a male, as long as you're above middle attractiveness, the effects are pretty much the same. If you're a female, highly attractive, not the best. Middle attractive, the best. Unattractive for both, the lowest amount of scholarships. All right, target interaction of target sex times subject sex. So does the difference between the subject sex, male or female judges, depend upon the target sex, the sex of the person being judged? This question is basically, we remove attraction, and the question is, do males differ than females, and how many scholarships they're going to give to males versus how many scholarships they're going to give to females? And we won't dwell on this too much because, once again, this is the last time this is going to occur. This interaction could not be possible. It is theoretically impossible to occur. So there are two lines here, one for male, one for female. There's the blue line. It's covered up exactly by the red line. Because if you're a male, let's back up here. If you're a male judge and you are faced with 3 male applicants, so you're a male judge and you're faced with 3 male applicants, you got to give it to one of them. You're going to give it to 33% of the males. If you're a male judge and you're faced with 3 female applicants, you're going to have to give it to one of them. You're going to give it to 33% of the females. And if you're a female judge, you're going to do exactly the same thing. You're going to give a scholarship to 33% of the males, and you're going to give a scholarship to 33% of the females. So this was part of the design of the experiment. By making sure that the sex of the applicants was exactly the same, you got 3 males or 3 females, they guaranteed not only that these two variables here, target sex and subject sex, would not have a main effect, they also wouldn't even have an interaction. It's impossible. They couldn't possibly have an interaction. Once again, might look like it's being wasted, but definitely they do have an effect, and it's going to come out in their interaction. All right, attractiveness times subject sex interaction. So in this case, we are asking, are there differences in how attractiveness works? Are there differences on the effectiveness of attractiveness for male judges versus female judges? Do male judges react differently to attractiveness than female judges do? So in this case, it's as if we said, let's forget about male applications, let's forget about female applications, it's just people applications. So when people apply and they're being judged by a male, what's the effect of attractiveness? And when people apply and they're being judged by females, what's the effect of attractiveness? That's what this interaction is looking at. All right, so this one does have a possibility to have an interaction. What do we think is going to happen? What do we think is going to be the effect of attractiveness of people on male judges, what do we think is going to be the effective attractiveness of people on female judges? So when males are judging people, what's attractiveness going to impact their decision making? When females are judging people, how is attractiveness going to impact their decision making? Yep.
I feel like it would have a bigger impact on male judges than it would on female judges.
Okay.
Because guys are known to like be more or less like turned on by what they see, and girls are more or less turned on by what they hear.
Okay. So based on that idea, if that theory is true, if males are more turned on by what they see and females are more turned on by what they hear, this is completely visual. So we would expect the highest scholarships, highly attractive people to get the most scholarship from males, followed by a line that kind of goes down like that. And for females, are we thinking like a flat line?
More or less, maybe a small.
More or less?
In the middle.
So like maybe a little bit of a tilt, but not as much?
Yeah.
Okay, but still the higher the females will give more scholarships to the most attractive people?
Maybe middle people.
Maybe the middle people will get the most attractiveness? Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think the males will give the highest attractive ones the highest because we're just talking about relationships in my abnormal psych class, and they're talking about how males are typically more attracted to physical qualities, whereas women are more attracted to like resource qualities, like like money and stuff like that.
Okay.
Whereas males are more physical, so I think if we're basing it off of like your physical attractiveness, I think males would do it, or would rate higher attractive people.
Okay. So we're, once again, halo effect for males, and for females, straight kind of line, like a flat line?
I don't know for females.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
not really sure.
one of the difficulties in making these predictions, and again, this is why we do the results, is we need to keep in mind that the scholarships were sort of balanced in terms of their merit. So they were balanced in terms of their merit as much as possible. And in an experiment like this, what you do is you would use counterbalancing. So you would have scholarship A, B, and C, and then you would have male faces, for example, 1, 2, and 3. And you would make sure that face number 1 was on scholarship A the same amount of times that it was on scholarship B, the same amount of times that it was on scholarship C, same for face number 2, and same for face number 3. So in that way, it cancels out any sort of merit that the actual applications had, because they weren't just like, here's a picture, who do you think should get the scholarship? They were like, well, here's an application. Oh, and by the way, here's a photo of them as well. So they did read through the application. This is kind of like when you equalize merit, what does attractiveness do? And that can get a little dicey in terms of, well, what is exactly that effect going to be when something doesn't directly speak to that prediction. So this is also going to come up when you're writing your discussion section. It's good to kind of experience it here. Some of your theories, some of your articles are not going to speak directly to what we were looking at. So in a lot of them, you're going to see percent recall. In some of them, you're going to see confidence level. But there might be ones that don't make predictions in that regard. There might be ones that don't touch on those. There might be ones, like in this case, where we have theories of visual attraction that'll affect males, but we have theories of auditory attraction that'll affect females, but there's nothing auditory here, right? So how do we make predictions for females based on that theory? And the answer is you don't. You just simply say, here's a prediction for males, and you would have a sentence that said, the theory does not apply for females in this situation, or we cannot predict for females in this situation because this is visual and they're doing auditory. So also keep that in mind in your discussion. There might be theories that you can apply to say, oh, this theory predicts a lot about percent recall, but it predicts nothing about confidence intervals, and don't try to force it into predicting something about confidence intervals. Just acknowledge it and just be like, well, this theory predicts this percent recall. It says nothing about confidence intervals, So if we find what it predicted in percent recall, then that'll support the theory. If we don't, it'll refute the theory. And we're just going to ignore confidence levels when we're talking about that theory. All right, any other predictions about what we might find? All right, nobody wants to go for the males being flatline across because they don't notice attractiveness. That stereotype of the wife goes out, she gets her hair done, she comes home, and her husband doesn't even notice. Nobody wants to, okay. Nobody wants to bite on that one. All right, so that's the effect right there. And as some of you predicted quite correctly, male judges are affected by attractiveness in your typical halo effect. So the most attractive people got the highest scholarship from males. The middle attractive people, middle from males, unattractive people got the least. And in terms of females, once again, it was the middle attractive people that got the highest scholarships from females. Fewer if you were highly attractive, and then fewer if you were unattractive. So not a flat line. Attractiveness was definitely affecting both sets of judges, but once again, in a very different way. So let's play that telephone game one more time. You get a text on your cell phone, and a friend of yours is saying, I'm going to a job interview. Should I get all dressed up and make myself look as attractive as possible? Should I just roll out of bed and go? What does your psychology knowledge recommend? What would you need to know based on this result right here? Yep.
Who was your interview with?
You would need to know who their interview is with. So you would text them back and you would say, who are you getting interviewed with? And if they say, oh, I looked it up online, my interviewer is a male, you would say, oh, in that case, look your best. Get as dressed up as you possibly can. Get your makeup done, get your hair done, take a shower, put on your suit and tie, make yourself look presentable, because that's going to be the best attractiveness level if your judge is a male. If they come back to you and say, oh no, my interview got rescheduled, I'm now being interviewed by a female, then you would say, oh, well, that changes the story. If it's a female interviewer, go for middle attractiveness. Not too much makeup, don't just roll out of bed, make yourself presentable, but not too presentable. That's going to give you the best effect in terms of the effect on your interview. So once again, that idea of needing two pieces of information is the core of an interaction. That idea of not being able to know what the effect of attractiveness is until you know what judge is there, until you say, where are you going? Are you going to be on the red line or are you going to be on the blue line? And you can't say what the effect of attractiveness is. That's the core of an interaction. All right, so does the difference between attractiveness depend upon the subject sex, men or women judges? Yes, it does. Men have a classic sort of halo effect. Women have this inverted U, where the most scholarships go to middle attractive people. All right, so now we're going to get to the final three-way interaction. So target sex times attractiveness times subject sex interaction. Does the pattern of results depend upon all three levels? Basically, if your friend texted you and said, I'm going for a job interview, what should I do? Do you have to text back? Number one, new phone, who dis, male or female? Number two, who is interviewing you? If both of those pieces of information is required, then we have a three-way interaction. If not, then we don't have a three-way interaction. Spoiler alert, we have a three-way interaction. So let's start taking a look at what that three-way interaction is. All right, so we're going to start off with male applicants. So we're going to first restrict our look at male applicants. And what I want to know is when males are judging male applicants, who's going to get the most scholarships? And when females are judging male applicants, who's going to get the most scholarships? So any speculations on that?
I think for females judging males, it'll just be like a typical halo effect.
Okay, so for females judging males, highly attractive males get the most scholarships, and then that decreases as attractiveness decreases. So that would be the prediction from the halo effect. Any predictions for males judging males? What's going to happen there? Mm-hmm.
I think for that case, it'll be the middle attractive people will get, or the middle attractive males will get the most scholarships.
Okay.
It will like, and then the least attractive males will probably get the least still.
All right. Any mechanisms come to mind?
I would say because like a lot, like how guys view other guys
Mhm.
is less typical that we think like super attractive guys are just gonna be smarter. Just like there's a stereotype of like the strong attractive jock,
Mhm.
but he's just kind of dumb.
Right. Okay. So in this case, when we didn't see it when people were judging males, but when males are judging males, maybe that stereotype of the attractive individual can't possibly be intelligent will come out as well, right? So, there are these stereotypes, and I think sometimes we don't want to just come out and say it and say that, oh, these stereotypes exist, because we wish they didn't exist. But the behavioral, psychological reality of it is it does exist. So you don't have to watch too many teenage comedies to know that the idea of the attractive female bimbo and the idea of the dumb jock are pretty standard, right? They're stock characters. Not because people look at them and say, I don't understand why they would think that. It's because they look at them and say, that seems about right. That seems to fit the stereotype. So there are these stereotypes out there. We need to be aware of them as psychologists. If that's the area that you're going into, you are going to delve into some pretty disheartening stuff, but we need to be aware of it because it is a behavior and it does impact how we do our cognition. All right, any other speculations about what we might find? Yep.
I feel like if it's like the same sex judging the same sex, like male judging male and female judging female,
Okay.
it'll be like the middle attractive people who have the highest scholarships, because I feel like you almost get some like competitiveness or jealousy, because like if you're judging somebody that's like the same sex as you, there is like you have something to be compared on.
Yep.
And so you can't possibly let this person be attractive and smart, so you can't give them the scholarship. They can't have it all.
Okay.
But if it's like a male judging a female or a female judging a male, we're like, it's more, that's what you do when you go to find like a boyfriend or girlfriend. You spend your life judging, like, most people judging the opposite sex to figure out who they think is most attractive, who they want. Like, that's natural to like look to the attractive opposite sex.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. It totally does. So there is a lot of this this idea of in-group versus out-group. You judge people in-group differently than you judge them out-group, and sometimes you're friendlier to your in-group. Sometimes you're friendlier to the out-group. So it could be that when females are judging males, they look at an attractive male and it's an out-group, right? They're not in the same category. They're not competing for the same resources, so they don't worry about it. But when you're judging inside your own group, all of a sudden you're in the same category. You're competing for the same resources, and one of the big kind of psychological feelings that we all have is that belief in a fair world, I believe is what it's called. And everybody has a belief in a fair world to some degree. And nothing gets us angrier than violations of a fair world, violations of justice. That's why if you ever take a look at what is the top trending topics, in social media or in the news, it'll always be violations of fairness. So it'll be things like cultural appropriation, right? Because people are like, it's unfair that they're stealing my culture for a Halloween costume. And then the other people will be like, it's unfair that I can't wear what I want without being criticized. Both sides are angry because both sides perceive it as unfair. We kind of have this feeling that life should be fair. And when you see somebody that's highly attractive, and you find out, oh my gosh, they're super intelligent as well, it just seems like too much, right? So it's like, oh, you're highly attractive. Well, you can't be that intelligent. Oh, you got a 4.0 and you were valedictorian. Well, you can't be that physical. Oh, you were captain of the football team. Well, you can't be that talented. Oh, you're a concert pianist, right? It gets to the point where you're like, I hate you so much because it's just too much, right? It violates that feeling of fairness. So that could happen here. In group, we might see that, in this case, males judging males, maybe the highly attractive males will get lower. Middle attractive males are like, you know what, that's fine, that's good enough. They could be intelligent, and unattractive males, who knows? All right, so that's a lot of speculation. Some of that is right, some of that is incorrect. That is what we found when males were being judged. So for females, we'll do the red line first. For females judging males, we kind of have a classic halo effect here. And it almost seems as if, as long as you're beyond some sort of threshold, you're attractive enough. So if you're highly attractive, that's fine. If you're middle attractive, that's fine. As long as you're above this threshold of attractiveness, you're okay. But if you're unattractive, then you're not perceived as deserving of a scholarship. And then for males judging males, we get a little bit of what you were talking about, where the highest, not by much, but it is the highest, is actually the middle attractive males. So the middle attractive males get the highest. Highly attractive males, it's less. It's not much less. It's just a little bit less, but it is less. So that would support the idea that they feel they're in competition, brings it down a little bit. But definitely the least amount goes to the unattractive individuals. All right, so that was males being judged. Males being judged by females, males being judged by males. What about males judging females? Let's do that one first. What do we think is going to happen when males judge females? What was that? Probably the halo effect. Anybody want to predict anything differently? Yep.
I think they'll play into the stereotype of like the dumb bimbo.
Okay.
Then middle attractive females get the most.
All right. So we have playing into the stereotype of the dumb bimbo. Once again, that kind of idea maybe of fairness to a lesser degree. And then we also have the idea of the halo effect, where higher attractive individuals get the most scholarships. As it turns out, it is the halo effect, and it's about as straight line a halo effect as you could get. So this is literally the classic halo effect. This is the line you would get if you asked a psychology professor to draw you a hypothetical halo effect. It would say, oh, this is what a halo effect looks like. So that's about as halo effect as you can get. And it's interesting that this is for males, because you'll notice that for females, we don't get so much of a halo effect, and we'll see what happens in the last one in just a bit. But for males, we get this straight line halo effect, and this is a good indication of why you report your subject characteristics, because you need to know who's in your experiment, where did you get them from. And if you were to do a look at the history of the halo effect, it is one of the most robust outcomes, right? Like it's been tried again, it's been reproduced. It happens over and over and over again. And I would be very interested to know what were the subject breakdowns of the subjects in those experiments. And I would bet they were mostly male. I would bet that out of 100 subjects, 80 of them were male. Out of 100 subjects, maybe 90 of them were male, because the halo effect has been found over and over and over again. And males, apparently, when they're judging females, give a clean halo effect. Like this is a beautiful halo effect. This is exactly the kind of data where if you're doing an experiment and you see this, you're like, oh my goodness, so easy to interpret and so clean and so nice. But that's your classic halo effect. All right, so one last one. Females judging females. What do we think is going to happen when females judge females? Who's going to get the most? Who's going to get the least?
Middle attractiveness gets the most.
Middle.
Competitive, like in-group, out-group, you can't have it all thing.
You have your competitive in-group, out-group. You can't have it all. So middle attractive gets the most. Any other predictions on that? I think you've been very convincing on that argument. And yeah, that's exactly what they found. And this result is actually, this result is breaking my computer. This result is actually why this research got picked up by mainstream media. So I heard about this in a popular, news site, webpage. This is the effect that they got when females were judging females. So by far, the greatest effect of attractiveness, by far the lowest scores for the highly attractive females. Middle attractive females got the most. This is like the first time unattractive females did better than any other group, in this case doing better than highly attractive females. So that was the big result, that was the big huge result. That's the reason that this got picked up. To wrap up our look at interactions, this is a classic three-way interaction. If you wanted to give somebody advice on how attractive should they be in a job interview, you need two more pieces of information before you can tell them the effect of attractiveness. You need to know, are they male or female? And you need to know, are they being judged by males or female? Because every single one of these lines is different. This is your classic three-way interaction. So we have our exam next time. We're going to be taking a look at, this will be, these three-way interactions, factorial designs will be on the exam. But we're not quite done with this, because we do need to think about this a little bit more in terms of critical thinking. And what we're going to visit on the next time that we meet for class. So not the exam, that's next time we meet is the exam. But a week from today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at interpreting these results to kind of help us with our interpretation of our discussion section, and specifically with our applications of the discussion section. And what I would like you to think about is, in this result, what caused this interaction? So we have this interaction, and this is a very important sort of thing to bring up. We have this interaction. Two of the variables were assigned. So the target sex, the sex of the applicants, that was randomly assigned. Subjects were said, here are 3 male applicants. Subjects were said, here are 3 female applicants, randomly assigned. Attractiveness was also assigned to everybody. Everybody saw 3 levels of attractiveness. The one variable in here that could not be assigned was the subject sex, the judge's sex. So you could not have a subject walk in and say, you're going to be a male today, so go over there, and you're going to be a female today, so go over there. You can't do that. You can't randomly assign that. Because of that, you have to be very careful when you're interpreting these interactions. So one reason for this, and this is the reason that kind of made it into popular culture, is that this is just the way that females are. They are vindictive. This is vindictive, let's face it. This is them saying, I hate that, good-looking woman, and I'm taking her down, right? This is like plain and simple. That's what people interpreted when they saw this. What they forgot, though, is that this is not guaranteed to be because women are this way. This is not guaranteed because this is the way that women are. It could be anything else associated with being a female in this particular society. So as psychologists, we're going to do this next time after the exam. I want you to think about what could have possibly caused this interaction. So we've had some really nice clues today. Is it about competitiveness? Is it about in-group versus out-group competition? So one possibility is that, yes, it is about competitiveness, because you take a look at the female curve, and even though it's more extreme, take a look at the male curve. Male curve is the same curve, right? More for the middle, more for the middle. So if it's about competitiveness, why would females feel that they're under more competitive stress than males do, right? Or is it about something else? Is it about access to resources? Why would there be more access to resources than this versus that? We're going to take a look at that for critical thinking, because again, one of the dangers of this is jumping to conclusions. And it's quite possible that this female curve occurred because that's just the way women are. That's one possibility. But our minds lock in on that one possibility. So we got to fight that as psychologists and say, all right, that is one possibility. What about competitiveness? What about other factors that are associated with being male or female in our society? And that's what we're going to do the time after the exam. All right, any final questions or comments before we wrap it up? All right, that is it for today. So next time, again, I'll see you. We're going to have the exam. That's the only thing we're going to be doing in that class. And other than that, we are done for today.